to become a full-time trader, I didn't really have a choice. I was a convicted felon. I stole from my employer. My victim was my employer. I was currently on drug court, so always on the brink of getting like a 48-hour sanction in jail or whatever, on probation. I was probably the least employable person.
Many options traders dream about becoming full-time traders. But what is life when you actually get there? My guest today had an extraordinary transition in his life. A few years back, he was in prison. When he came out, it was hard to get a good normal job. Today is a full-time options trader. Welcome from Pennsylvania, Kirk Durbin.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me.
Why do you think so many hobby traders dream about being full-time traders?
I think it's the allure, the freedom and the unlimited potential, the challenge that's involved. There's a special competition. Your greatest competitor is yourself. And I just think there's like a stereotype of people that want to be full-time traders, and they're usually very competitive and like to solve puzzles. And what's better than the market with a never-ending puzzle that's unsolvable and competing against yourself.
We'll hear a lot more about your life as a full-time trader, what you have learned from being a full-time trader, the challenges, the problems, your tips and tricks. But let's dig a little bit into your personal story first. I guess the tabloid version is that you were in prison, now you are a full-time trader. What happened?
Yeah, it's a big jump. So there's a lot of details in between to cover. So yeah, like you said, I'm from Pennsylvania, born and raised right in the middle of the state. So my story kind of starts in I did the normal life thing up until I graduated high school, went to college for psychology, and I would say that was probably like in about 2008ish. I stumbled on Timothy Sykes, penny trader turned millionaire. I didn't have any money then and just had these dreams that stock trading was easy. So I paper traded on an app for a bit, but it was never serious. I think it was about 2009. I ended up quitting college. The whole time I was using opiates, and I ended up quitting college because of that, and went on about a 6-year tear of drug use and crime, really. And in 2014, I was charged with a felony. I was working in information security, and the company I worked for, actually, the other end of the business was electronic recycling and data destruction. And so they got a lot of computers from hospitals or schools or any like organization transitioning into newer tech. I was stealing computers out of the refurb pile and refurbing them and selling them and pawning them and doing all that for drug money. And they ended up hitting me with a felony burglary for being in the building and using it for a purpose that I wasn't supposed to be there for. I was sentenced to 3 years of drug court and some probation. And for what drug court is, it's kind of like they call it an intermediate punishment program. So it's kind of like the stop between county prison and state jail. It was an intensive program with rehabs, counseling, and prison punishments and stuff like that. So I did a little bit of time in jail, ended up going to rehab for a month, got out, got high, went back to jail, and then ended up going to a 3-month rehab. But then whenever I got home, I was trying to get my stuff together, and I just felt like I should grow up and start investing and saving for my family.
And that's a big transition from being in a bit of a hopeless situation, in and out of rehab, and then suddenly throwing yourself into investment and trading.
So I was always kind of interested in the finance stuff. And then I started to get interested in like the FIRE community, like financial independent, retire early. So I had the knowledge of that's what I'm supposed to do. It was always in the back of my head. So and then part of drug court is you check in every other week. You have to journal, and then they have like different milestones they set for each person. So like one of mine was defines employment. And I ended up doing websites for a local newspaper and Yellow Pages business. That was my income. My wife at the time was working at an urgent care as a receptionist. And so we didn't have a ton of money, but I did have Bitcoin from prior. So yeah, sorry. So I missed that part. Bitcoin at the time, it was super cheap. It was like I don't know, 20 bucks maybe. Actually, the first Bitcoin I bought was for $11. So I've been in Bitcoin for a long time.
But I guess those bitcoins that you bought for 11 and $20, you kept some of them and made some good money on them, I guess.
Yeah, so they kind of just sat on a hard drive, and I didn't really care about them because they were so cheap, and there wasn't an easy on and off ramp at the time. So I had Bitcoin sitting on a hard drive, and I had this idea that I just need to grow up and start investing and stuff. But I also had this idea that the stock market was too slow. And I already had this crypto, and I was already into tech and new tech. I mined Litecoin at that previous employer. Like I was deep in it. Every 2 weeks when we got paid, like we would pay our bills, groceries, all the essential stuff, and then anything excess just got shoveled into crypto. At the time, darknet markets kind of controlled everything. So whenever Alphabet was the biggest market at the time, they were about to list Ethereum on there as a way to as a way to pay on their market. And at the same time, they had the Ethereum, I think it was the Ethereum Developers Conference, and I think it was the first one. And there was all these name household brands that were speaking and investing in Ethereum, like Mitsubishi and Toyota. So I just dumped everything I could into Ethereum at like $9 or something. And we all know everything exploded. And then there was the 2017 bull run of crypto, and it was pretty much like you could buy anything and it would go up. Like it was just easy mode. My best trades were those Ponzi schemes. You just had to get in and out. You didn't want to lock up the coins and stake, but if you could hold the coin while everybody else did that and it rocketed. So those are some of my better crypto trades. In 2017, it ran up, hit like 19,000, just under 20, and started turning around. I had this life-changing money. So I panic sold about 90% of it, 95% of it, and cashed out, and I took it with me. Then in 2018 or so, I actually gave all the money to a financial advisor. I read that if you have a windfall, you should sit on it for a bit and not do anything with it, so you're not being impulsive or spending all of it. So I did that. I gave it to an advisor, but I was still watching charts, and I would call my advisor and be like, "Yo, man, like the moving averages are going to cross. We're getting a death cross. We got to get out." And he's like, no, we got to weather the storm. And yeah, he's not a trader, he's an investor. And I didn't acknowledge that disconnect between the two of us. So the death cross happened. I think it was October or November of 18. I was salty because I was right, and I allowed myself to be talked out of it. I was actually listening to Tony Robbins' book, Unshakable, at the same time. It was the chapter where he talks about the line that fiduciaries walk with mutual funds and their kickbacks. And then he was also talking about like life insurance. And that evening, my advisor calls me, and it was like him and Tony Robbins were reading out of the same playbook. Like he did exactly what Tony said they do. So I ended up firing him. And then I think it was the end of 2018, I started to put together a dividend portfolio and discovered options and covered calls, the wheel. And I had this idea of just selling covered calls against slow moving dividend payers, like the aristocrats, Disney at the time, those type of companies. And I was on Tasty Trade at the time, and I discovered this zero DTE contract, this SPX contract. I looked and I saw it stop trading at 4. There was no assignment risk or anything like that. So I'm putting on these like super wide iron condors and zero DT, and it's like 99% probability of profit, 1% chance of, or less than 1% chance of loss. And it was like, I had 99% chance to make like say $10,000-$20,000 and less than 1% to lose much more. So I was like, yeah, let's keep doing it. I did that for a while, and it worked until it didn't. And one day my famous last words were like, there's no way SPX goes down that low. And I went heavy on some went really heavy on some short puts. SPX did go down that low, and I gave up a significant amount of money. It was a lot. Fortunately, it was all the gains from all the condors prior to that. So like it didn't hurt. Well, no, it hurt. I still lost a ton of money.
How much did you lose?
It was in the 6 digits. Even though I justify it with myself and say it was all profit. I mean, it takes the sting away a little bit, but it still sucks.
But it's a fascinating story you have, because it's high risk for the good and the bad. It's skills, some elements of luck, all bringing you to where you are today.
I never claimed that buying crypto or doing anything like that was a skill thing. That was just right place, right time, very lucky, second chance at life, really.
Why did you want to become a full-time trader, and how did that happen?
To become a full-time trader, I didn't really have a choice. I was a convicted felon. I stole from my employer. My victim was my employer. I was currently on drug court, always on the brink of getting a 48-hour sanction in jail or on probation. I was probably the least employable person. And I was calling around in applications, McAfee, Disney, like notable names. Like I was doing phone call interview. LinkedIn was one. And like we were always going, like it was always so hopeful until we hit that record spot. So I was just like, I give up. I'm not going to keep abusing myself. This sucks. So I just felt like I didn't have a choice. So I dove into candlesticks and learning TA and patterns and, uh, I think everybody's common starting point browsing through the trading view indicator page and seeing what works and what doesn't and just kind of trying to figure it out.
And when was it that you became a full-time trader?
I guess January of 19 is when I officially started at Kirk Durbin Capital.
How has that been going?
It's been going great. I mean, I would say I live a pretty awesome lifestyle. I got 2 children, I have a wife, we vacation, and I was able to retire my wife, so she's a stay-at-home mom.
But I'm
Um,
curious now, as a full-time trader, what does a typical day look for you? How do you organize your day with this activity?
so I probably go against everything that others read about being a full-time trader, and because you'll hear a lot of like mindset, and it's a lot of like the stoicism, positive affirmations, meditation, having this really rigid schedule and routine. And I get it. The goal is to be tip top mental shape or whatever, but I just not built for that. So my day typically probably goes like I wake up in the morning and get my son going. He goes to the junior high, so he goes to school earlier than my daughter. Take him down to the school, come back, jump on the computer, maybe catch up on some news, turn on Bloomberg, check out futures. By that time, my daughter's usually awake and my wife has got her ready and we hang out in the morning, watch music videos or whatever. And then when she's off, I head down to my desk in the basement and I go and I open up the futures chart and plot some levels for the day. I focus on the overnight high and low and the previous day high and low. I plot those lines out and make sure all the bots and scripts are up and running and ready to go. And then I hang out with everybody on Discord. Sometimes my wife and I will go out, run errands, eat lunch, get coffee, whatever. I have a bunch of entrepreneurial ideas. I used to own a cat cafe. We have a mobile Build a Bear esque business now. I'll focus on some crazy idea and build a prototype out or something.
But so you're not the type who keep, let's say, strict office hours, so to speak.
So I do try and keep the office hour mindset because it's very important to have a disconnect between your real life and your work life. I don't want to walk upstairs and be looking at futures over dinner. I just try and separate it from my day-to-day life. I don't do the rigid like 11:30 to 12 lunch. I don't really have a schedule. It's as long
What
I
does
just
your practical setup look like? You have like a separate office. How have you set up in the more practical setup?
So I have a desk, I have my MacBook, and I have a USB-C powered second monitor that I have like it turns sideways, like vertical, so you can see more of the options chain. And that's really it. And like I would say maybe 30 or 40% of the time I'm upstairs on the couch with my MacBook. If I don't really need the extra screen real estate, I'm hanging out upstairs, just sitting on the couch and trading from there, maybe playing video games, maybe watching a movie.
Something I wonder about, because I'm sure, as for most traders, your income goes up and down. There are some great months and months with maybe even loss. How do you pay yourself and decide how much to take out of your account to pay for your living expenses, etc.? Does it depend on the results for each month, or you have like a fixed monthly amount you pay yourself, or how do you do it?
So it used to be that way. I used to do a thing where I would sell a portion of when I was only doing zero DT. I would sell a specific percentage of my net lick as my sizing. Then what would happen though is like I would win, 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 win. My size would grow, 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 and then I would lose, and it would like the loss was inherently bigger because I just came off a 5 day win streak. That made paying myself difficult. So then I started doing more of a static size. What I would do is like I'd have a cash cushion so I don't go negative. And every Saturday when everything was expired and settled, I would take whatever money was left over. For example, if I had a $20,000 cash cushion and my cash balance was 23,000, I would take that 3,000 out and I put it in my personal bank account or a local bank and just let it balloon. But at that time, zero DT was so good that the savings ballooned very quickly. And there was just like this huge cash pile. So it's kind of like, I don't think this is the best way to do it. I should probably reinvest some of this. I put together an equities portfolio, an options trading portfolio, and then I just started running it through. I have a spreadsheet to model out sizing, and then I take the returns and honestly, I run them through like ChatGPT, ask it safe withdrawal rate, ask it to do like Monte Carlo, ask it to simulate the .com crash, different things like that. And then I just kind of modeled out a number that we could live comfortably, or the account could still grow a little bit and didn't fail in any of the back tests. And I just hope that I'm not the first failure of the Monte Carlo simulation. The way I'm paying myself right now, I currently have a set amount that I pull out every 1st and 15th of the month. And I hope my back testing and modeling is correct because it's going to be tough to find a job as a felon with a 20-year trading gap or a 20-year employment gap.
I want to move on to the more mental challenge of being a full-time trader because income goes up and down. You have good days, bad days. You're working alone at home. I guess it's lonely sometimes. Can you say a little bit about the mental challenges and psychological traits you need to be able to succeed in a job like that?
It's hard. It's not easy. It's very mentally taxing. And I try to remain mindful of that because like I don't want the stress to start taking a wear on me physically. You know, I see futures traders having heart attacks super young because of their years in the pit. I'm here to better my life, not shorten it. But it's definitely tough. There's a big difference between trading as a hobby or trading to give a little boost to your 401k portfolio. Income goes up and down. And if I don't perform, we don't eat. It's a different mindset for sure. Did you say psychological traits? I would say the most important one would be probably like emotional intelligence and emotional self-awareness. It's hard to put a finger on emotional control because you don't really know you're out of control until it's too late. So I think the more important thing is the step before that, like the self-awareness and being able to tell, oh, hey, I'm going on tilt. I should maybe shut it down and walk away or, go take a break for a couple minutes and just regroup, stuff like that. So I think self-awareness is really key. And also it's discipline and conviction. You can't trade something you don't have conviction in. And whenever you hit a losing streak, you have to have conviction in the trade or you're gonna back out, you're gonna start strategy hopping, you're gonna start self-sabotage essentially.
We started by saying that many hobby traders dream about this life of being a full-time trader. But can any good hobby trader also be a good full-time trader?
I don't think so. I think there's two different things because I think there is a comfort in the safety net below you. We can both walk the tightrope but like if you have a paycheck coming on Friday, there's a level of comfort and a level of risk taking that you might take because you could just replenish it. It's not a big deal. You're getting paid. Versus the full-time trader who, if we fall from the tightrope, we're dead. You lump in family and stuff like that, and then you're just going to can you hear them howling? Can you
A
pick
little
up that?
bit. Yeah, I
You're,
heard them, but not very loud.
fire
You can
whistles blow. Okay. Yeah. Hey, so Sorry about the dog. I have two huskies upstairs and the fire whistle's blowing, so you might hear them singing in the background. But yeah. So anyway, yeah. If you that's the big decision though, or the big divider between hobby and real trading. It's the risk you're taking, and it's not just the risk in how much money you're going to lose, but your lifestyle as well. It's the difference between a Disney vacation and camping in the woods over the weekend.
And I guess there is this issue of other people depending on you, this stress element that you need to provide for your family, that people will deal with that stress in different ways.
Oh yeah, for sure. And these last 2 weeks have been tough. I've paid myself for January and February and for the 1st of March. But the last week of February and this week has been insane. And I actually think I might have gone red on the year because of the equities dragging me down. And that can be damaging to your psyche. You just took out X amount of money for the last 2 months, and then you look at your equity curve and you're flat. You haven't made anything. That can mess with you. I have an 8-year-old who loves Disney princesses. It's always like, when's the cruise? When can we go to the park? I want to tell her tomorrow, but it's not free. There's definitely that additional psychological pressure to perform well when you have others depending on you. And it's not just like digital nomad traveling the world.
What's the best way to deal with that stress?
I would say having like I said, the self-awareness thing is key, because you have to even be able to identify that you're feeling that way. And then having good support. And I don't even know if it's like, I have a Discord community. I have people in there that I'm closer with than others. There's good support there because you can say, hey, I lost 10,000 today. And you can kind of get talked through it. Whereas, if I go to my in real life friend that works a 9 to 5, and they're like, yeah, man, I lost $10,000 today. Like, they're probably gonna be upset with me for blowing it, because that 10,000 would change their entire year. So having a good support system is key, but someone to just vent to and complain to. And then also, I know I keep talking about my wife, and as cliche as it sounds, like, she's the biggest supporter I got. She hears me complain about the market. She hears me when I get excited about a trade idea and I just need to walk through it out loud. If you were looking at it from the outside, you'd think she knew what I was talking about, but definitely doesn't. But she sits there and she listens to, and like that, I think that's really key, because when I'm feeling down and kind of want to hit indeed.com and maybe look for a job, she's like, nah, man, zoom out, do your spreadsheet thing, spreadsheet therapy.
I guess good risk management is also a way of dealing with that stress.
Absolutely. So that's one of the things, is I actually kind of get dogged on. I used to get dogged on sometimes because I would trade percentage wise. I was trading much lower than other people around me were. And they're like, oh, you could turn it up. But I sized mine at where if I lost everything, like worst day would be like 5 digits. And the reason why is because I just found that was an emotional, psychological level. I started to feel it. If I look and I'm down 12,000, I could feel my body temperature rising and just kind of feeling it in my stomach. And just, I just found that 5 digit was just some kind of psychological barrier. And it paid well. So I just never really considered to scale up and try and juice as much as I can out of it. I don't want to fix anything that's not broken. But yeah, I think risk management, other people, they don't have that issue. As long as they stay alive to fight another day, they can stomach a 30-40% drawdown. Good for them. I wish I could. I would have a ton of money if I could throw around as much as I could, or as much as I could, but to preserve the capital and preserve my sanity, I have a cap on how much I would like to lose in one day.
One thing I have learned as an option trader is that risk willingness and risk profile, that's very individual. We are all very different in it, and we need to make our own choice. How much risk are we willing to take, and how much risk are we comfortable with? You cannot just look at the other trader. You have to find your style and your willingness to risk money.
And you're absolutely right. And and this is kind of one of the downsides of the community thing. You have to kind of find that. It's a balancing act like anything else. But you go look, for example, today, even one of the discords I saw, they're like, the one account's up 40% this month. and we're 6 days in. So, but like, and like, you beat yourself up over it, but then you ask them what they're trading. You're not even trading the same thing. Or one of the things that like people benchmark themselves against the S&P 500, but you're not even doing anything that the S&P 500 is doing. So why? You and I get part of it is so that like, because why not just like buy and hold versus trading? I do both. So I have the equity portfolio, and then the options on top of it are the income portion.
How do you go about to plan your trading strategies and make your trading plans?
What I do is to create an options portfolio, I guess, would be I'm a big fan of Option Omega, great guys, good friends, awesome application. So what I would do though is I would, craft an options trading strategy. And then I have a spreadsheet that I use where I'll go into the portfolio view if you're an Option Omega user. I will export the returns and dump them into a spreadsheet. And then I use a multiplier, maybe run everything at one lot. And then I could go through and say like, what happens if I do this in two lots? And then it just basically doubles the return of that one strategy, but I can see how it affects the entire portfolio of strategies as a whole. So like I do that, and then basically find a blend that I'm comfortable with, build the bots, and press play.
Um, Many hobby traders or traders dream about becoming a full time trader. And if someone is planning or hoping to become a full time trader and trying to prepare him or herself for it, what would you say are the three best advices you would give to that hobby trader? How to prepare him or herself?
I think that first you need to get your expenses and your relationships in line with it first. Relationship wise, it took my mom a long time to come to terms that I wasn't working a 9 to 5. So it would be phone calls at 10 a.m. like, hey, you want to do XYZ? And I was like, Mom, I'm working. And it took her a long time for it to click. So, and again, significant others, like you're taking a big risk with them. So you got to make sure they're on board. Second, though, is definitely expenses, on the topic of significant others, financial arguments are like the leading cause of divorce or something like that. So you want to make sure your expenses are good and you're not putting any strain on your family and yourself whenever you're starting out, because you need to stay alive to keep going. If you got to start drawing down your capital to pay bills, then it's kind of like the anti of what you want to do. Second piece of advice I'd say is that that mental fortitude and just kind of centering yourself and knowing yourself. I have a good trading friend that often says like, there's a million ways, there's countless ways to make money in the market, and the real battle is between the ears. It's true, because whenever you start losing, you see a drawdown, like you're not looking at a failed strategy at first. I feel like at least for me, I turn inward and like it's me messing up. I'm messing up. So I need to, and so it's like being able to grab that feeling and turn it around and come back and do the spread. I coined the spreadsheet therapy thing where you just go in and like zoom out. Everybody says zoom out, but like actually do it and go look. And then you see that this drawdown you're in is such a small blip, and you've done it before. You've probably even been through it before and just forgot what it felt like, or it was maybe a little different, but you've been through it. And as long as your risk is in check, you'll be all right. And it's just kind of finding your zen. And the third step is, I know I said I like the unconventional daily schedule, and you often hear like to treat it like a business. But I do think though you have to respect it. It's a serious business. It's a serious career with serious consequences if you don't take it seriously and don't respect what you're doing. You see these Twitter finance gurus that are on the beach and driving Lambos. Is it possible? Yes, but is it what it's like? No. You need to treat it as a professional thing. I treat my spreadsheets very seriously. I make sure they're up to date all the time. I update my back test and review my strategies each month. The first of every month, I call it spreadsheet day. It's when I go through and review where we're at across the board, whether expenses, total net worth, trading, equities, the balance between them. And so, yeah, while I'm unconventional, there is like a business aspect to it. And I think the big thing is respecting the market because it will take everything from you if you don't.
What is the biggest mistake that you see traders do?
I would say probably breaking their own rules, going off the rails, trying to add in some discretionary stuff. Kids, I think the worst thing that can happen is when you break your rules and it works in your favor. When I first got started, I was selling these ridiculous contracts, like a ridiculous quantity. I want to say like 80, 90 iron condors at a clip. And it worked until it didn't. But like I was rewarded for bad decisions so many times leading up to the explosion. That's probably one of the biggest mistakes and something most people might not be aware of. It's just not something they think about.
For someone who has the ambition to become a full-time trader, where is the best place to learn, to prepare yourself? Do you have any suggestions for where to learn?
Yeah, so I think finding a good community, and when I say community, I don't necessarily mean like finding your favorite leader to pay a subscription to. I'm talking about like find a group of people that trade like you can connect with, you can bounce ideas off of, they can hit you up for their support. That's the best way to learn. Diving into the deep end and having someone there to kind of like hey, I did X, and they can say, well, maybe try this differently, or I would have done this. Or if you have a trade idea, I often will message a friend and be like, hey, remind me to tell you about this idea just so I don't forget it. And then he might say, yeah, I've actually had that same idea and looked into it, and this is what I found, or this is where I left off and
I
stuff like that. And I think that's a great way to learn. Also, I'm not a huge book reader, so like I know like you get a lot of trading in the zone recommendations or books like that, but I think that there's two recent books that are really good. And the one's called Mastering the Mental Game of Trading, written by Steve Goldstein, but he's the host of Alpha Mind podcast. And he's a trading coach, but he outlines his process of how he goes through, and he just outlines the process of like how he goes through coaching people. And there's a circle with 4 quadrants and whatever, but great book with stories and like how to apply this method of mastering the mental game of trading, I guess. And then the other book is Cash Rolls, Reminiscence of a Day Trader by David Hale. And it's just short stories and like reminiscing on different trades that happened and how they came about, how they were managed, but it takes like a psychological approach to it, I guess, that you can kind of see like under the hood. And it's not just about he saw trader saw volatility rising and did this unconventional thing and is now a billionaire. It's more like they got trapped in this trade and like they had to like kind of rein it all in. And so yeah, those are two recent books that are not your typical recommendations that I would recommend to any
I will
traders.
put them on my list for sure. Kirk, you mentioned communities, and you also run a community called Speaking Greeks
Yes, yes.
for retail traders, and also a podcast associated with it. Just tell us a little bit about that.
So Speaking Greeks is basically a community of retail traders. The goal is to become the voice of retail. And hopefully we're going to be putting on an SPX conference at some point next year. Yeah, come check it out, speakinggreeks.com. And there's no fees, nothing like that. It's just a group of people that like to talk trash and trade the market.
Kirk, thank you very much for sharing both your life story, but also your experience of working as a full-time trader with your tips and tricks. It was really valuable. Thank you very much
Hey,
for joining.
I appreciate it. Thank you for the invitation.